Welcome to the 164 Forever podcast for newcomers. We focus on the basic and simple 12 steps of recovery for compulsive eaters. The three of us, you can't see, but there are three of us here, go to OA meetings. So that's kind of how we got to know each other, but we're all in food recovery. We're all compulsive eaters, and food was a big problem for us. And so we've decided to create a little podcast where we could talk about the things we learned and maybe shed some light on some stuff for other people who are new, even newer than we are to program. So if you have an issue with food and what you're doing isn't working, hang out, listen, join our WhatsApp group, send us an email. We're happy to help you. There's a lot of workshops and stuff coming up as we get into the fall here. And we're not experts, we're just compulsive eaters. I know we're going to sound like experts because we're amazing, but we're not experts.
We're humble.
My name is Carol. We're humble and but you know, we're just trying. Hang out with us, stick with us. My name is Carol. I'm a compulsive eater and I'm from Los Angeles, and I'm here with my friends Rebecca.
Hiya, I'm Rebecca from the UK. Yeah, really grateful to be with you tonight, or today, rather.
That's whatever time it is then they're listening, right? Who knows? And Paul.
Yeah, I'm Paul, and I'm also on the west coast of the U.S., Huntington Beach, Orange County. The happiest place on earth is about 30 minutes away, so glad to be here.
And that's Disneyland if you're in another country, because they might have a different happiest place on earth. I don't know. So in our last podcast, we talked about step 5. And it was amazing. You should for sure listen to it. No, but we have gone through all the steps. So if you want to start at step 1, just go back to wherever you've found us, either YouTube or Podbean, and just start on step 1 and give them a listen. And hopefully they'll be have some help for you. But this week we're going to focus on step 6 and 7, and we're going to put them together for a reason. So steps 1 through 5 have really prepped us for 6 and 7. We saw that we were powerless. We saw that there was a solution, and we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over. And then we did some work to identify the things that were blocking us from our higher power, from the flow of the universe and the power that is out there in the universe that everybody can freely tap into to help make our lives better and help other people. And then we shared what we found in this 4th step with somebody else. And that was our step 5. And then, the 4 and 5 helped us to identify these character defects that block us off from this power and have become a way of living for so many of us, but also not a useful or helpful way of living. And so suddenly you'll do this 5th step and then realize you're suddenly at 6 and 7. And in the big book, step 6 is, we were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character, right? The defects of character that we just identified in 4 and 5. And step 7 is, once we decide that we're ready to give up these character defects, we humbly ask our higher power, the universe, to remove these shortcomings. And so why don't I throw to one of my partners? Which one of you wants to take this topic on first? Crickets, just crickets. Jiminy Cricket. Let's go to Paul, the happiest place on earth. Jiminy Cricket.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, for me, this was a bit of a surprise because, you know, I had done a lot of work on an inventory and spent hours. My poor sponsor spent hours with me on the phone in my 5th step. And he said, okay, go to page 75. And I think it was 75. And read, starting with returning home. He prepped me ahead of time, and he said, you know, make sure you've got an hour after you do your 5th step that you can go to a quiet place. And so I read it, and he said, when you're done, send me a text and tell me that you're done after completing step 7, after the 2nd paragraph. And I thought, okay. All right. And then it's like, oh my gosh, then it says, let's look at steps 8 and 9. And it's like, this really is moving pretty quickly. And I think the things that came up for me is I didn't really know all of my character defects at the time. So I was happy to say, yeah, I'm ready. Just take them all, take them all. But as I have worked 10 steps and learned what I learned in my 5th step, I began to see those character defects in action and how deeply ingrained in who I was being and my addictive personality. And I continue to see them. And like one of my biggest ones is a people pleaser and trying to manage my image so that I look good. And wow, I don't think I was ready. I'm beginning to be willing to have God remove that. But boy, that's a huge safety blanket. And the humility, when I look at 7, the humility to let go of that and to begin to be honest with people. When I was just talking to a counselor, and I just shared a few things that I had been dishonest about, that I didn't want her to know this, and I didn't want her to think this, and I was managing relationships, managing what you thought about me, managing that you would be nice to me. And so now I'm looking at that character defect and I say, God, please remove that. But am I really ready to let go of that? I don't know. More will be revealed.
That's how I felt too. When I finished them, I was like, yeah, I want God to remove them, but I wasn't so sure that was going to happen or that I was really ready. Rebecca, what was your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. It's kind of like, it's really good to note that this, like all of them, are just a beginning. And like I too only really came to understand my defects with time and understanding the new qualities that were appearing in my life, or the new kind of ideals that I was starting to walk towards. I only really fully grasped them later on. It was all kind of like, oh, selfish, self-seeking, oh, I don't really get the differences. But like with time and with 10 steps, all will be revealed. But it was good. Something that I did that was useful around my 6 and 7 was, just kind of sitting just for a moment with this idea of being entirely ready to have God remove the defects, and thinking about, well, what is stopping me from being entirely ready? Like, what's the payoff of me clinging on to a bit of fear, or a bit of pride, or a bit of being judgmental? What do I get out of it? And just taking a beat to kind of think, well, when I stay in that kind of being judgmental, the payoff is I feel a little bit more superior, and I don't have to be as vulnerable, and I'm not really showing up in the world honestly, and I'm kind of protected. I don't get hurt. And just that idea kind of started the kind of facade of, okay, maybe I can let go of being judgmental a bit, because if I'm getting kind of love and acceptance from my loving higher power, then I don't need to get it from, being judgmental, from these defects. But like, it was good to kind of take a moment to just be aware that, some of these defects, they sound bad, but actually I enjoyed them. And that's why I had them in my life. I was used to them. They were like, the kind of bad kid in school who you're like, okay, we'll hang out. I know you're trouble, but let's kind of hang a bit. They're a bit like that.
I always love the bad kid in school.
You do, right? So, that was useful to kind of just take a beat for that. But, essentially, the next step is humbly ask God. This is not something that I do. This is something that I ask God to do, and I can be aware and I can walk towards like good qualities, but this is something God does, God as I understand. And it might not be straight away, or it might not be like 100%. The aim of these steps is that we are fitting ourselves to be of maximum use to God and people around us. But that might be I don't know, a 70% reduction in my pride. Still got 30%. I'm still like human. But that reduction means that I can be useful and show up in the world in the way that my higher power wants me to show up, right? And also that might not happen on day one. That might happen 2 weeks after I take this step, or 2 years after. You know, I don't really know. But it's probably good to note that, like, yes, some things I felt a change with immediately and some things I didn't, you know, but like more will be revealed. So really just kind of ask God as you understand, and then just leave it to God, you know, and don't expect like there to be a lightning bolt, because there might not be, but there might be, there could be, I don't know.
There most likely won't be, but there might be. I haven't
Yeah.
heard of a lot of lightning bolts other than Bill I know. And I know some people will be like, yeah, I had a lightning bolt, kind of a, you know, a bright light sort of experience. But yeah, that is, you know, that was, so my experience doing the steps was a lot like Paul's. You know, my sponsor set up a time for me to do step 5, and I called her, and we read through my step. And then, you know, she says, now turn to page 75. I read the bottom paragraph. I take an hour to pray and meditate. I call her back. And then she says, great, top 76, let's start reading. And we read that first paragraph. If we can answer to our satisfaction, we then look at step 6. We have emphasized willingness to as being indispensable. Are we now ready to let God remove from us all the things which we have admitted are objectionable? Can he now take them all, every one? If we still cling to something we will not let go of, we ask God to help us be willing. And I'm glad it said that, because I have that same experience, Rebecca, of like, and I don't know, like, yes, I loved all my character defects. They were great. You know what they made? My personality. My personality was a lump of character defects. You know, I'm like sassy and funny and sarcastic and biting and mean and blunt and honest, and yet people pleasing. And I want to be liked, and I want everyone to like and appreciate me. And yet I also want to be invisible at the same time somehow and not be noticed. Just a whole bunch of stuff. So I was like, well, I can at least ask God to help me be willing. Like I am and I felt very willing at the time, but I also am 51 years old. So I also know that just because I have this like almost evangelical feeling at a certain moment about something, or like, you know, I get on kicks of things where it's like, yes. And then days pass and reality sets in. So I also in the back of my head knew that yes, I wanted God to take these, but would it really happen? Would I just fall back into doing all this stuff? Like, I didn't know. I wasn't so sure, but I really wanted God to do it. And then she's like, great, let's read the next step. And it's when we're ready, we say something like this: my creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. We have now completed step 7. Those 2 paragraphs that I just read on 76, that's step 6 and 7. And that's really all I did with my sponsor. I didn't do any writing. And I've heard people say they've taken time. They listened to a podcast on each step. They took time to do writing. There's no wrong, you know, spiritual growth is spiritual growth, and whatever it takes. And if something helped your sponsor and they give it to you and say, listen to this podcast, it really helped me on step 6. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I just kind of do it the same way my sponsor did it with me, which is, you know, we read these and then we start reading the next paragraph. I'm like, oh shoot, now I'm on 8 and 9. Here, this is what I thought I was dreading, you know, step 4 and 5. And then I realized, you know, I was dreading them because they are, you know, setting me up for 8 and 9, which really in the long run did not turn out to be anywhere near as scary, and truly an ongoing process, you know. And then you know, living in 10 and 11 and 12 really basically is like doing little 4th steps all the time. I'm always doing these little inventories, always looking at what makes me any feeling, you know, any kind of a feeling, even happy feelings. Sometimes I need to look at and see like what's going on there, what's going on, because you know those are the times when I'll eat. Sometimes is when I'm you know, when I least suspect it, when you know, that's how it's been for me in the past. So I don't know, I found these steps to be very simple and straightforward. And I didn't really need to dwell on them too much. I know after I got off the phone with my sponsor, I sat there with my big book and I was like talking to God and just, like, please help me. Like, I really want to mean this, I mean it. I think I mean it. I want to mean it, but I wasn't sure. And it's okay. Because what I did is I just continued doing the work. And I really realized once I got to step 12 that like finishing step 12 was the beginning of my work. Now I had this set of tools. Like, I always thought these 12 steps were this thing you complete. And then you're like, then your feet don't quite touch the ground, right? You're like floating around just above the ground, like an angel or like a ghost or something, like you're super power spiritual. But it really, and it's been almost a year. I guess I guess around the end of the year will be a year since I finished the steps. But like Paula said, these character defects are just, they come and go. And some of the ones that plagued me in the beginning are not the ones that plague me now. And then also as I got rid of some things, I can see other things, more subtle things that I might not have thought were a character defect. And they just, it wasn't even a conscious choice for a lot of them. It was almost like a reflex. I'd just been doing them so long. Like if every morning you wake up, you go pee, you make a cup of coffee, you sit at the table and read a newspaper, and you just do that every day, right? It's not good or bad. It's kind of a benign activity. But if you were I'm going to change this today. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do something else. It's hard. It's hard to change something that's been so ingrained. And a lot of my character defects come from childhood trauma. I had a lot of trauma in my childhood, as so many people have. Like, I always thought I was like the only one. Yeah, no, everybody's walking around traumatized by things and events of their past and their childhood. And then I would react to these things. So, like I was molested. I was often physically like spanked a lot, to a degree that some might consider abusive and some might not. I know people who are far more abused. But so I have big reactions. I react like as if somebody is going to attack me or beat me when that's not really what's happening. And so I get where it came from, and I need to be kind and gentle with myself, but I don't need that stuff anymore. And it only hurts me. It makes my relationships hard, and it makes me feel bad about myself. And really, when I start feeling bad about myself, then I'm cut off from God. Then I can't do God's work. Then I'm not really of any use to anybody. So I got to let that stuff go. Right. Do you guys do anything different with your sponsees than what your sponsor did with you?
One thing that I find helpful, I had a lot of questions around 6 and 7. And what I found helpful was looking at the AA 12 and 12, because, they're essays about each step. And it really kind of explains it in a nice, neat way that, our defects, they've been dominant, they've been active in disproportionate levels, and like you said, Carol, we all are carrying underneath it all, it's these fears, and they've been dominating, and fear is underneath all of this, and it just really clarifies that this is about fear, and then it's about asking a higher power, as we understand, to help us with the fear, and being willing to be helped with the fear, and also in the 12 and 12, it talks a lot about humility. And I probably mentioned it before, but I never really understood the word properly as it means in our step work, which is about kind of what is and what isn't. It's about right sizing. And what can be done and what can't. And what can't be done is I can't do this on my own. What can be done is I can ask my higher power to help me, and then amazing things can be done. This is kind of, it helps me to reflect on kind of humility. And I had a lot of questions, but like what we were saying earlier, with time, you just kind of learn more about it. So don't be nervous if 6 and 7 is still a bit vague in your mind. It will become clearer, I guess.
Paul, anything else to add?
I think focusing on the humility, and throughout my life, I always thought that I needed to fix myself because there was something that was wrong with me. And clearly, if I couldn't fix it, then I was lost. It's like there was no Obi-Wan Kenobi for me. It's the only hope was I had to fix it myself. But today, and in this step work that I can see is that I can ask God to remove those things. And even if God can just remove those things for a short period of time, like my selfishness, it will come back in minutes. My self-centeredness, my dishonesty, my fears, they're going to be back. They're not going anyplace. And until I'm not a human being anymore, which I'm not looking forward to that time, they're going to be there. And so some of them will go sooner than others. And when I see them, the biggest thing my sponsor says to me is that I will never rise above the level of being a human being, which means these character defects for most of us, they were installed to protect us. And they were perfect, like Carol said, they were perfect at the time, but they don't work for me anymore. And I don't need to feel guilty that I have them, and asking God to remove them. What a gift that is, that it's not up to me. I don't have to, one, I'm not broken, and two, I don't need to fix me. That's God's job. I just keep turning it over. When I see it, I can give it to him. And there's a hell of a lot of things I don't see. I don't see my arrogance and pride sometimes. I may not see it until after, and then I shudder and I think, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just did that. So it's when we see him, we can ask God to take them. And we ask God to take them all for sure, but I think when I see it and I'm aware of it and I'm tripping over my character defects, then I can ask God, say, hey, this is yours. I certainly can't fix it. So that's it for me.
Right. Yeah, I feel like 6 and 7 are pretty simple and straightforward. And in our next podcast, we're going to get into step 8. So be sure to subscribe so that you'll get a little alert when the next one comes live. So that's all our time for today. If you liked what you heard, subscribe, as I just said. We're on both Podbean and YouTube, whichever you like. We also have a website, which is 164forever.com. And our email address is 164forever@gmail.com. And we have a WhatsApp group. So if you just look below the podcast, wherever you are, you're going to see all this information, the email address, and then a link to our little WhatsApp group and stuff like that. So I just want to thank so much Paul and Rebecca for joining me as we do. We record on Thursdays, although who knows when you're listening to this, but we get together on Thursdays and record. And it's always good to hear them and see their beautiful faces.
Yeah, thank you, Carol. Thanks, Carol, for being our fearless leader and tech guru and master of ceremonies and bringing and heart that you bring.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I like to stay busy. It's good. And Al-Anon, they always said when I got busy, I got better. And I always remember that. And it's true. I'm a happy person when I'm busy. When I got things, idleness, what is the devil's playground, idle hands, idle minds, idle, whatever you want to call it. All right. So we hope you come back and subscribe to the podcast. Everybody have a great day.